Well, the Obama administration set to roll out a controversial new FCC program requesting information from some radio and TV stations and newspapers about how they cover news and who decides what gets covered. Shannon Bream live in Washington. So, Shannon, how is this program supposed to work?
Well, Don, the FCC is going to send representatives into TV and radio stations in various markets and ask them a whole lot of questions about things like what stories they do, how they decide their topics, who they decide to interview, what gets cut, and how much time they spend on topics from the environment to politics. The stated purpose of the study is this, to, quote, ascertain the process by which stories are selected, station priorities for content, production quality, and population served, perceived station bias, perceived percent of news dedicated to each of the 8 sins. Those are key topics that the FCC thinks should be covered, and perceived responsiveness to underserved populations. John, they say it's all about making sure that each local community is getting served in the way it specifically requires.
But there are a lot of people pretty worried about this study. Why?
Well, news of the study was enough to raise alarm for a number of GOP House members, so much so that they've sent a letter to the chairman of the FCC saying that the project showed a, quote, startling disregard for the bedrock constitutional principles that prevent government intrusion into the press. It's important to note, of course, that the FCC is the same agency that controls the licenses of these stations that they're going to study. Here's what former FCC Commissioner Robert McDowell told me about that situation.
The question is, what's the quid pro quo? How much government coercion might there be with all of this? Is the government trying to ultimately dictate speech and dictate how journalists are supposed to do their jobs? And it doesn't matter what your political stripe might be, that's just not a good idea, especially when you have such a competitive communications landscape.
The study is scheduled to kick off first in Columbia, South Carolina, but earlier this week, stations there said they still haven't heard anything about it directly from the FCC. John?
Yeah, that's an interesting use of government inspection.
Taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, thanks.